Hi everyone, Eric Weiss here with Full Cycle Product Development. Before I get started, I just want to make a quick announcement. I am so happy to have launched my first book called Build the Right Things: How to Design and Build a Product People Will Love. In addition, I've launched my first course called Full Cycle Product Development. I've been working on this for a really long time. I'm very proud of it, and I really hope that it's going to help a lot of people out there build a great product and build a business that is a smashing success. So you can get the book at buildtherightthings.com, and you can get the course at fullcycleproduct.com. Okay, so today I'm going to tackle a problem, almost a cliche, if you will, in the startup ecosystem, and that is, why do 90% of startups fail? Okay, now that's a general number, and it generally holds true. There is some difference between different industries, but in general, you have this funnel of companies that begin from an idea stage through early validation, prototype, development, launch, traction, fundraising, and ultimately to some sort of meaningful exit or acquisition or growth. And of all the companies that begin, 90% of them fail to have any meaningful exit. Okay. And this is where I spend the majority of my time and focus, is on that startup journey to the first acquisition. And so, I do a lot of research in this space, and I recently found a study or a survey by Statista, where they surveyed a number of startup founders who had failed and tried to identify, the main reasons for those failures. And I like it because it resonates really well with, my experience and my teachings and so on. And so I have a lot of guidance for, how to avoid these specific problems. And this is actually what is being addressed in my book and my course as well. So it's very applicable. So the top 4 reasons why startups fail. Number 1, 42% of the respondents said that they failed to meet a market need. They failed to solve a big enough problem in the market. Okay, and this is something that I find almost everywhere to some degree, is that too many founders are rushing to build something, an idea that they have on their own, without fully validating first that there is a severe market need, and again is backed up in the data. Second, 29% said that they ran out of cash. Early on, every dollar matters, and a lot of times it's sort of death by 1,000 cuts. But the more efficiently and effectively you can manage your early stage cash, the more likely you are to be able to get to that traction or get to that next round of funding or what have you. And again, I'll talk about how to do all that successfully in a moment. Number 3, 23% was a failure of the team, but either with the executives or they made some poor hires or weren't able to hire the right people at the right time. Number 4, they were out-competed. So 19% simply lost to an overly competitive landscape. Okay, so in other studies and other research that I've done as well, I tried to find specific remedies to these failures or to these challenges. So market need is something that I tackle head on in all of my content, all of my courses and articles and so on. I'm a big fan of the user-centered design philosophy or methodology, but essentially what it is do your market research, validate your product or your idea upfront, early and often, right? So not only the initial concept, but also through various iterations, not only with just the entire product, but even with individual features. So always look for ways of getting validation with real data in the market before you spend the time and money to build something. And specifically around market need, so many founders are very passionate, maybe egotistical, if you will, but when they come up with this idea that they think is really going to change the world, they're rushing to go off and build it. They just want to get it done and get it out into somebody's hands. Okay. And unfortunately, they tend to try to avoid, listening to countering opinions. If the data don't support it, if advisors don't support it, a lot of times people don't listen to that advice, and they continue to go on that path, as long as they can, with the idea that, the market simply hasn't realized it yet, or they're somehow, anticipating the market need, which, is an important thing, as a founder or as a product leader. It is important to be able to anticipate the needs, but, to go too far, to invest too much without really making sure that you're solving a big enough problem is certainly a recipe for failure. So some of the ways that I recommend, both to my consulting clients, but also in my course materials as well, is do some early stage interviews and shadowing focus groups, those kinds of things, and do a lot more of it than you think you may or think you want to do, and really make sure that you're questioning your own assumptions, challenging your own beliefs, getting data from different types of people or from a broad enough segment. Build a digital version of this, get real data validation from the market as a whole. So build a landing page, test it with some ads, track conversion, email out follow-up surveys, and try to get some real data from the market that shows that that you're solving a big problem, and that your solution resonates, that your customers believe, that potential customers believe that your solution will solve that problem, and then get some real in-depth feedback around how much money they're spending, what solutions they're using, how those solutions fail, and then how well, really digging into your concept and how well your concept resonates with them. Do they believe that your concept will solve their problem? How much they'd be willing to pay for it? And then what would it take for them to convert from an existing solution? Okay. So number 2, running out of cash. Obviously, there are a lot of reasons why people run out of cash. Obviously, not having enough of it, may be a challenge. But one of the things that I find is that when a company is run inefficiently, it will run inefficiently at scale. Meaning, however much money they raise, they will spend it all if it's an inefficient organization at its core. And so, the philosophy and methodology that I drive is, agile product management and, again, user-centered design. So, measure twice, cut once. Plan, theorize, plan, come up with an idea or a hypothesis around a problem and a concept, but then go and test it as quickly and cheaply as possible, right? So with every new feature, with every new product that you launch, you think to yourself, how can I test this as quickly and cheaply as possible? So build a framework, build a prototype, build a storyboard or a sketch or what have you, get some feedback, get some data, and then iteratively improve it over time, right? So don't spend any more money than you absolutely have to build something that isn't going to be received well by your potential customers or by your customers once you're in the market. So my whole model is deferring the cost of software development as long as possible until you have a crystal clear understanding of the problem, the solution, you have a fully fleshed out user experience, design, even some early clickable prototypes, get as much done as you can before you hire developers. That even includes a full-out business plan, so understanding how you're going to sell it, what are your revenue models going to be, what kind of partnerships can you create, strategic partnerships, cross promotions, those kinds of things. Really just flesh out everything you can around the business, especially when it's just you. Okay. And then in a slightly next stage is when you're simply outsourcing tasks. Right. So using Fiverr, Upwork, these kind of freelancers, but just generally, not hiring and managing salaried employees, but paying people for individual tasks and deliverables. And you're the one that's kind of stewarding this thing along until you are absolutely certain that you've got something that really has legs here. Then you can go raise seed capital or angel money. You can start investing your own money. You can start doing the crazy things that entrepreneurs do to get early stage funding. But then that you'll be able to put it to work efficiently, and that you're going to be making these tight iterations, feedback loops, course corrections, and what have you to make sure that you are efficiently using your capital in those early stages where it means so much. Okay. Number 3, the team. There's a lot of challenges around team building, team dynamic, hiring, and so on. And I can't get into all that right now, obviously, but certainly the founding team matters a lot. One of the things that I address in other articles and so on is having a technical co-founder as a key strategic decision, right? So there's a lot of founders out there who claim to be non-technical, and I go into why that I think is an illusion or a self-limiting belief. I think anybody can learn how to be technical enough to at least manage a software project. But there's a lot of non-technical founders that think that they can simply outsource all of the technology or all the engineering expertise. If your core business is a technology product, you absolutely must have someone on your team who is a technology expert. Okay. Now, at the very beginning stages, that could be an advisor or a fractional CTO, which is actually where most of my consulting business comes from, is being a strategic advisor and fractional CTO to a lot of non-technical founders. The other is having at least a senior level or a chief architect fully employed in your team. Maybe they're not a co-founder, but at least there's somebody who can kind of drive and manage good architecture. And if you're going to be outsourcing development, that they can kind of keep them honest or make sure that they're developing to a high level of coding standards and best practices. And what have you. So making sure that you must have somebody on your team who has experience building and developing technology products, because there's a lot of detail. And unfortunately, what happens with a lot of founders is, they hire a low cost team internally, right, without having real senior people, senior management, or they outsource development. And what happens is they become a team of yes men. They build you what you want because they're just not experienced enough to challenge you or say no. Or their incentives are not to tell you to say no. Their incentives are to simply deliver what you ask for. But there's so much that goes into building a long-lasting, scalable technology platform around architecture, security, infrastructure, and so on, that if you haven't done this before, you are going to be, you're going to be wasting a ton of money, because as soon as this thing hits the market, or maybe even beforehand, you're going to find yourself reworking a lot of what you've already built. Okay, so it's obviously key to have some strong technology talent on your team, but then also understanding the type of team that you're going to need at different stages in the business, right? So obviously early on, you need some really strong development talent. You're building out the technology. I think actually design is equally, if not more important than development. So I think at the very early stages, you want to load heavily on design, for branding, for marketing, copy editing, and then obviously user experience. So definitely have a user experience person or someone dedicated to the user experience, which is not the graphics, it's not the screens and the UI, it's the UX, it's the flow, it's the whole experience, right? So having UI and UX early on, ramping up development, as you get to that next stage, and sort of deferring a lot of the, I don't want to say non-essential, but the non-core product roles. So sales, marketing, analytics, social media management, even customer service. I think a lot of that should be done by you, the founder, or the co-founders early on, or kind of just have that be a much smaller contingent of your team, because early on you really want to make sure that everybody that is on payroll, that's on salary, is either building something or selling something. Okay, and if they're selling something, they need to be working on commission as well, right? So you want to eliminate as much of the overhead cost of labor as possible that's not directly driving revenue. Okay. So lastly, outcompeted. Obviously, this is a tough one to unpack. It's one that I go into a lot around strategy, around product strategy. The way I'll summarize it is this. You want to make sure, you want to understand the competitive landscape, understand who all the players are, right? And then be able to classify them and put them into different sort of categories here. So you obviously have, big players, big gigantic behemoth, companies that are kind of going after a mass market, maybe something that's a little bit more generic. And then you either have a bunch of niche players that are segmenting the market, or you have a bunch of just commodity players that are undifferentiated and they're pretty much competing on price. You want to begin as one of those key niche players. So you want to take a problem that is either, well, you want to have some competition, but you want to have a reasonable amount of freedom in the market where you don't have too many direct competitors. And then you want to segment it to a particular niche so that you can be the best at targeting their particular problems or their particular experience in a more nuanced way that the big players can't address. And while doing that, also differentiating yourself from the commodity players. So I have this model called whales versus piranhas that I go into in my course. But the whales, the big guys, you don't want to go directly head to head with them because they'll just simply outspend you, or they'll just they'll buy a competitor or whatnot to just knock you out. And so you don't want to go at them head to head. You want to kind of either carve out a slice that they're not really addressing very well, or playing in an adjacent space, where they're not really going after. Now the piranhas, again, are these commodity folks that are undifferentiated. It's a race to the bottom. They're competing on price, and they typically end up just burning out. They run out of cash because they're just not making enough profit margins to really grow and reinvest in the business. So you want to find some open water, some green field, and find a segment of the market that isn't being addressed sufficiently, and be the best at that, right? So, really understand the market, understand the customers better than anybody else, have really tight relationships with them, really tight feedback loops, and then just give them everything you got. Like, really care, really love them, really, go above and beyond with your customer service and with the care and quality of your product, and really solve that problem better than anybody else, right? And that's how you can outpace your competitors in a crowded market. Now, the last thing that I will say that's a characteristic of startups that succeed is that they have strong guidance. Okay, so many founders that go out on their own, they're making things up as they go along, or they're sort of figuring things out on their own, and so many of these problems have already been solved by people with more experience than them, or people that have, whether it's in the industry, they have more understanding of the segment of the market, whether it's building technology, sales, or what have you. The successful founders are the one that seek out and engage with good mentors, advisors, consultants, what have you. And this is the core of my business, whether it's the course that I create, whether it's my coaching, consulting, or what have you. I am a mentor and a guide, an experienced startup founder, technology product builder, and it's my mission in life to help entrepreneurs, to be that scout and that guide for them, and help them come up the learning curve faster, right? And not make the same mistakes that I've made or that I've seen so many people make, and essentially get to where they need to go more quickly, efficiently, and simply. Because again, while there are always nuances to new products, there are always similarities. Everything we build is sort of built on the backs of what came before. And there's people out there like myself that have seen a lot. As a consultant, I get to see this great sort of broad brush of the market, or broad view of the market, where I see these patterns. I see these repeating cycles, or these cliches, or these archetypes, if you will, where it's very easily for me to spot, even in an industry or with a product that is new to me. I can come into a new space where I might not be a domain expert, but I see the patterns, and I can make these these associations that for the most part turn out to be true, and provide that guidance to folks. So while all of my clients and all of my students in my courses are always doing something brand new. They're always doing something that's never quite been done that way before because, well, if they had, then there wouldn't be any opportunity for them, right? While there are some unique things about the solution that they create or the business that they're in, the majority of it, has been done before. It has been modeled. We have seen it and can provide that guidance. So, that is what makes or breaks a successful founder. That's what separates the 90% that fail from the 10% that succeed. Okay. And you can definitely be one of them. So I have created a number of tools and products that can help you at whatever stage you're at. So I give away a free toolkit that uses all the templates that I've created or that I use in my practice to help founders and entrepreneurs, build and ideate and flesh out their product. I give that away for free. I've got my book, Build the Right Things, and I've got my course, Full Cycle Product Development, and obviously I'm available for coaching and consulting as well. So whatever stage you're at, I have something that hopefully can help you get to the next stage. And I really hope so because I love helping entrepreneurs, and it's my mission in life to help as many of you as I possibly can stretch myself, digitize, replicate in any way possible so that I can provide some real value to you guys out there. So thank you so much for watching, and best of luck to you.